Spray-On is committed to total quality leadership. In keeping with this commitment, this video will educate the fill room employee about all safety measures and procedures to be followed when working in the fill room. Most of the drums or other bulk containers that you will have to move are much too heavy to be moved safely without some sort of mechanical aid. An empty 55-gallon drum weighs between 40 and 50 pounds. When full, the drums you will be moving weigh anywhere from 350 to 700 pounds each. You may have to move 20 to 40 or more such drums a considerable distance safely and quickly during any 8-hour shift. The drum truck is your primary tool for the safe and efficient movement of drums. When selecting a drum truck, check it visually for any structural defects or damage before attempting to use it. Make sure the wheels and fork are securely attached and in good condition. Examine the clamp to determine that it is not broken and it moves freely but firmly. Check the frame for any broken welds or bent members. Make sure the handles are clean and not slippery. A good firm grip is essential. If the drum truck you are examining does have a safety defect or damage, label it with a brief description of the problem and take it to the maintenance department for repairs. Drums are delivered to the staging area on wooden skids. When bringing a drum into the fill room, the first step is to get it off the skid without injuring yourself or dropping and damaging the drum. Position the drum truck in front of the drum you wish to move. Make sure that the front of the drum's bottom chime is resting firmly on the wood of the skid. If it isn't, try to reposition the drum manually. Be careful not to pinch your fingers or strain your back. Rock the truck back onto the rear wheels, then move it forward until the front wheels, or at least the forks, are solidly on the skid. Push the truck forward until both forks rest on the skid and press firmly against the bottom chime. Now engage the clamp firmly inside the rim of the drum's lid. This will hold the drum securely against the drum truck. Keep one hand firmly on the clamp to keep it from slipping loose. Now rock the truck back until all the weight is completely supported by the front wheels. This will slide the forks under the drum. Check to confirm that that is where they really are so that you don't puncture the drum. Roll the truck backwards until the rear wheels are no longer over the skid. Now carefully lower them to the floor, raising the front wheels off the skid. Keep rolling backwards until the truck is clear of the skid, then rock the truck forward until all 4 wheels are on the floor. If the drum you need is too close to the edge of the skid and cannot be lifted safely or cannot be manually repositioned, you must place an empty skid in front of the skid with the drums on it to act as a platform, providing support and room to maneuver. Now you are ready to wheel the drum in. When placing drums back onto a skid, you simply reverse the process. When rolling drums through the fill room, it is important not to damage any hoses or air lines that may be stretched across your path. Portable steel ramps are provided for this purpose. They should be moved to wherever they are needed whenever possible. If all the ramps are in use and you must go over hoses or air lines, rock the truck onto its rear wheels and move the truck forward until the front wheels are past the hose. Rock the truck forward onto its front wheels and raise the rear wheels over the hose. Push forward until the rear wheels are clear of the hose. Lower the truck until all 4 wheels are on the floor. When a drum has fallen over and it's lying on its side, do not attempt to lift it by yourself. Attempting to lift it by yourself could result in a serious back injury or other injury. Drums usually weigh between 300 and 700 pounds. Whenever you are working with the drums, you must exercise extreme caution. The safest way to right a fallen drum is to have a tow motor lift it for you. The tow motor driver will use the tow motor forks to raise the drum to an upright position. When moving drums through the fill room, hold the handles of the drum truck firmly using both hands to keep the drum truck under control. Be aware of any obstacles in your path through the fill room, such as ramps, ladders, hoses, tools, loose agitator balls, pieces of broken wood from skids, and so on. Drums are easier and safer to push. You can see where you're going, and you have better control of the drum. From time to time, you will have to move entire skids of drums or other containers such as boxes of agitator balls all at once. Or you may have to move large cubic containers called totes. Some totes sit on pallets and others stand on 4 legs. Mixing tanks are also moved from fill room to fill room on skids. In these situations, you will use a tool called a pallet jack or pallet truck. The pallet truck consists of a U-shaped base and a pump or jack that raises and lowers the base. It has 4 wheels, 2 at the rear for steering, and 1 retractable wheel at the end of each leg of the U-shaped base, which raise and lower the base. It has a handle for steering, and on the handle a lever that determines whether the base is raised or lowered. To raise the base and the load, place the control lever in the down position and pump the handle up and down like the handle of a jack. To lower the platform and the load, simply raise the lever to the up position. When moving a load with the pallet truck, always try to do it by pushing rather than pulling. Pushing is easier on your back and less likely to result in an injury. Also, when pushing, there is much less possibility of tripping or falling and being run over by the pallet truck. When placing the pallet truck under the load, make sure that the legs of the truck are long enough so that the retractable wheels at the ends of the legs will not be obstructed by cross-bracing under the skid. Always place the pallet truck so the load's center of gravity is midway between the legs of the truck platform. Sometimes the loads you will move with the pallet truck are too heavy or awkward to be rolled safely over ramps. For example, skids of agitator balls or filled mixing tanks. In this case, it is sometimes safer and easier to remove the ramp and lift the hose over the load and the pallet truck. If you do remove the ramp, replace it when you are done. Ground wires are used in the prevention of static electricity, which could cause a spark and a flash fire. Ground wires can be found throughout the fill room. There are 2 types of ground wires. Stationary ground wires are ground wires that are permanently grounded. Portable ground wires are ground wires that can be moved to wherever they are needed and are used in bonding. Metal containers consist of 5-gallon pails, canned washing containers, 55 and 30-gallon drums, and filler drain pans. These must be properly bonded to a stationary ground when dispensing solvent or agitating drums. Metallic slurs must be properly grounded during dispensing of solvent and during agitation. The mixing of metallics is one of the most potentially dangerous fill room operations. The buildup of static electricity can easily result in a flash fire. Metallic slurs, zinc-rich primer, and primers are examples of where proper bonding and grounding must be adhered to during agitation. Metallic paint sometimes require a slurry to be made. The definition of a slurry is a mixture of insoluble material. If a slurry is required, it will be noticed at the bottom of the formula. With metallic paints, the insoluble material is usually gold powder or aluminum paste. It is usually, but not always, mixed with number 2 solvent. You should assemble all the necessary equipment and materials needed before you begin. The following items are needed: a clean 55-gallon drum to mix the slurry in, an agitator to agitate the slurry, a shovel for aluminum slurs, and a stick around 2 feet long for gold slurs. You must also have a portable ground wire that is in good condition and a free floor scale. If you're making an aluminum slurry, place the 55-gallon drum on the scale. Place the agitator inside the drum and secure it tightly. Using the portable ground wire, you must now properly ground the drum. Zero out the scale and add enough solvent to mix the slurry. The amount will depend on how much is required for the entire batch. Try to use as little as necessary. Zero out the scale and turn on the agitator. Now add the correct amount of aluminum paste using the shovel. Use care to avoid making a mess. When you make a gold slurry, you add the gold powder first before any solvent is used. As before, place a clean 55-gallon drum on an empty scale and zero out the scale. If the slurry requires an addition of a whole container of gold powder, place the drum on its side. Place the container of gold powder just inside the opening of the 55-gallon drum. Insert the stick into the container of gold and push the smaller drum into the 55-gallon drum as far as you can. Now turn the 55-gallon drum upright. The stick should prevent the smaller container from traveling to the bottom of the 55-gallon drum and aid in removing the smaller drum. If it requires another full container, repeat the same process. If it requires the addition of a partial container, use a quart can or something similar to add the correct amount. Once the correct amount of powder is in the drum and the drum is upright, properly ground the drum and place an air exhaust hose at the drum's mouth. Now add enough of the proper solvent to cover the powder to a depth of 6 to 8 inches. Using a long stick, carefully stir the powder thoroughly. This will allow the solvent to penetrate throughout the metallic powder and release a large quantity of air bubbles, greatly reducing the possibility of a flash fire once you begin mechanical agitation. When the bubbles cease, add more solvent if necessary and place an air-powered agitator in the drum and secure it tightly. Care must be taken that the agitator blades will not strike the sides of the drum once the agitator is turned on. This could not only result in a punctured drum, but also prevents a severe fire hazard. Now you can begin agitation. Place the drum in front of the tank and attach a ground wire to the drum. Place a clean agitator inside the drum, securing it tightly, and turn on the agitator. Static electricity is electricity at rest. It is usually generated by friction through the physical contact and separation of dissimilar material. 4 conditions must exist before static electricity can be a source of ignition. They are a means of generating static electricity, accumulation of the static charge sufficient to bridge the gap, a flammable atmosphere, and a spark with sufficient ignition energy. Bonding is the interconnecting of 2 objects by a means of a clamp and a bare wire. Its purpose is to equalize the electrical potential between the 2 objects. The conductive path is provided by clamps which make contact with the charged object and a low-resistance flexible cable which allows the charge to equalize. Grounding is the procedure used to carry the electrical charge through the ground wire and the conductive path. A typical ground may be connected directly to a conductive water pipe or to a grounding bus and ground rod. Plier clamps are the type of clamp used in the fill room. Plier clamps have sharp points of stainless steel, bronze, or carb alloy. These points dig into the metal and assure a good ground contact. Anytime you do the following things, you must be certain that everything is properly grounded. Drum dispensing, using mixing and letdown tanks, using fixed dispensing tanks, mixing and agitating drums, can piercing, and any transfer of solvents between containers. Never attach a ground wire after you start mixing or dispensing solvent, because that could cause a static spark. Never use plastic pails in the fill room because plastic is non-conductive and electricity can only be dissipated through a conductive material. Filler drain pans should always be grounded using the attached ground wires. One wire should be attached to the washout drum and the other to the filler railing. Before you begin piercing any cans, you must make sure that the piercer is grounded and the 5-gallon pail is in place and grounded to the piercer. A drum wrench is a fill room tool which consists of a 5/16 socket used to open and close 55 or 30-gallon drums. There are two types of drum wrenches, manual and an impact air gun, which must be hooked up to the compressed air source. A bung wrench is a fill room tool used to open and close bungs on 55 or 30-gallon drums. Caution must be used when removing bungs from drums because of built-up pressure inside the drum. Magnets are fill room tools used to pick up loose agitator balls. Drum agitators are fill room tools powered by compressed air. They are used to pre-agitate or mix materials in 55-gallon drums. There are two categories of hoses, all-purpose and special. All-purpose hoses are the most frequently used hoses in the fill room. These hoses are used when mixing and running all products that do not require a special hose setup. Special hoses come in 5 different types. J19 hoses. These hoses are used for J19 paints only to avoid silicone contamination. High-tech hoses. These hoses are used for high-tech solvents to avoid contamination. Solvent hoses. These hoses are used to dispense solvents. These hoses are smaller in diameter than a standard hose. Water hoses. These hoses are used only for water and must never be used for solvents. Air hoses. These are used to carry compressed air as a power source for non-electrical equipment. Latex hoses. These hoses are used for latex solvents to avoid contamination. All solvent hoses are manufactured with a ground wire built into the hose. Pre-straining vessels are used to filter products before they enter the filler. Each pump also contains a smaller pre-straining vessel. Each pre-straining vessel also contains a straining bag. The proper size straining bag for any given product is listed on the lab formula. The vessel should be cleaned between each order. Always make sure the pre-straining vessel gasket is properly seated before resealing the vessel. Pressure buildup inside of the vessel should always be relieved before opening the vessel or removing hoses. Gaskets come in a variety of sizes. Using the proper gasket for each fitting is critical for safe operations. When gaskets are found to be worn out or damaged, new gaskets can be obtained from the fill room supervisor or lead person. Most operations in the fill room require the use of pumps powered by compressed air. These pumps can be divided into 2 classifications, general and special purpose pumps. General purpose pumps are used in all fill room operations when special pumps are not required. Special purpose pumps have 3 types. They are used with their own special hose setup. The J19 pump. This pump is used for J19 paints only to avoid silicone contamination. The high-tech pump. This pump is used for high-tech solvents only to avoid contamination. The grease pump. This pump is used to add large quantities of thick grease into mixing tanks. There are many different adapters that are used to make connections between various fittings of different size. The airline fitting, the airline shutoff valve, the small solvent hose fitting, the double male regular hose fitting, the double male undercoat fitting, the male to female undercoat hose fitting, the male to female regular hose fitting with shutoff valve, the double female fitting, small solvent hose to regular hose fitting, the double female regular hose fitting, the small solvent hose elbow with shutoff valve, the regular solvent hose elbow with shutoff valve, and an elbow. Pumps are operated by compressed air. Product enters through the bottom of the pump and is discharged through the top of the pump. The inlet side of the pump generally contains a straining vessel. The pump's straining vessel contains a pressure release valve usually located at the top of the vessel. The pump contains a female fitting which requires a gasket for safe operation on the inlet side and a male fitting located on the discharge side. Proper pump hookup consists of airline and hose hookup. Select an airline long enough to reach from the stationary air pipe located on the wall to the location of the pump. All airlines have fittings at each end. If the fittings on the airline do not match up with the fittings on the wall and pump where they are to be connected, special airline adapters are located in each fill room. Once the proper fittings are found, the airline is then connected to the compressed air source on the wall and the inlet located on the pump. Each hose has a male and female end. The female end requires a gasket for safe operation. Always visually check to make sure the gasket is present and in good condition before connecting the hose. The female side of the hose is connected to the male end on the discharge side of the pump. A male end of another hose is connected to the female end of the inlet side of the pump. An additional hose hookup is made by joining male and female connections to reach any distance. Double male and female fittings are available for special hookups. Hose adapters are also available for different size hose hookups. Can piercing is the process of reclaiming usable product to be put back into batches. When piercing cans, safety equipment must be worn at all times. Safety equipment consists of rubber gloves, safety glasses, a face shield, and respirator if necessary. Before you begin, make sure the can piercer is clean and there is a clean, metal 5-gallon pail under the piercer. Make sure that it is properly grounded and that all gaskets are in place and in good condition. Place can to be pierced into the piercer. Keep one hand on the can while it is being pierced. If you don't hold it firmly down, the can could be ejected from the piercer, causing serious injury. When you are finished piercing cans, clean the piercer inside and out.